Come out with us and play. Love your London. Have a banana. On today's instalment of Love Your London, we'll be having a tour of the changing face of the Goodman's Fields area and visit the site of the original Whitechapel that gave its name to the Whitechapel area. But first, we're outside Wilton's Music Hall, which, according to the Theatres Trust, is the most important surviving early music hall in the whole world. And who are we to argue?
This is a really, really special place. I think this whole virus issue has really taken its toll on this place, which relied entirely on footfall, on people coming in. They've had to cancel over 50 shows. This is the Wilton's Music Hall, currently closed. Hopefully it will be open soon. It is grade 2 star listed. It is a fantastic place. So basically, this was originally a pub in about 1743, and it has this fantastic bar that they used to have in there called the Mahogany Bar as well. Now in 1859, a chap called Wilton converted this into a music hall, and inside it is fantastic. It had room for 1,500 people. Apparently there used to be this huge chandelier called a sunburner with 300 gas jets and 27,000 cut crystals. So this was almost knocked down and almost cleared for slums back in the 1960s, and it was actually Sir John Betterman, Peter Sellers and Spike Milligan and people like that who raised awareness for this place and got this made grade 2 star listed, and which means it's protected at last. It was in fact one of the 100 most endangered buildings in the country at one point, but it is protected, but they're running out of money because they've got no money at the moment. Now number 4 used to be a family used to live here, quite a large family, and they used to do import and export of leeches. They used to breed them, and they used to have this used to be a big major place.
Medicinal leeches.
Medicinal leeches.
This is where medicinal leech.
This is where they were made. Well, they weren't made. This is where they were. They were
kept happily in jars and put occasionally on people. That's what they were for. The barber surgeons.
That's right. Okay, so let's move on to the next place. Okay, so we're now in Magdalen Passage. It's Magdalen, not Magdalen. We're not in Oxford here. And the reason why I wanted to bring you down here is because this is where street numbering first happened. So for the very first time here on Prescott Street, they actually had a numbering system. It was very erratic. I mean, normally it was, instead of odds and evens, it was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Some streets just had really crazy systems. I mean, sometimes in some streets, I think in the centre of town, you actually had like 3 number 3s in the same street and stuff like that. There was no sort of real regulation about it, but it was brand new. Yeah, so it was not really until the 1880s when the numbering system became a lot more standardised. I think if you remember our Acton episodes, number 3 of Acton, we went down at Mill Hill Park Estate, and all the houses had different names, and they were then forced to actually have street numbers. If you haven't done so already, hit the subscribe button, and also like this video. Won't cost you a thing.
Woo, that wind.
This is St Mark Street. The only reason I'm just bringing up here is because this square, all the roads going around the square are called Tenter. So this is South Tenter Street. Up here you have East Tenter Street, North Tenter Street at the top, and West Tenter Street over there to the west. And if you'll remember earlier on when we were talking about the dyeing industry and all the silks and everything, this was basically one of those tenter grounds. So in the middle, all the canvases and the silks would be laid out and to dry, and hence that's why we get the term to be on tenter hooks. And this is just one. There was a tenter ground obviously just off Brick Lane. This is another one of those tenter grounds where they used to dry dyed products. So Tenter, still in the name. Now, this restaurant that we're coming to here on the left is the oldest still existing Indian restaurant in East London. 1939, just before World War II. The Halal restaurant, there you go, established 1939. The oldest Indian restaurant in East London. And it's been with the same family ever since. It is open.
You've got to order something from them. Open as usual, it says.
Where's the door? Here.
I don't think it's open yet. They open later in the day.
Right.
Because it's like a takeaway place. And
Opens at
7 days.
12. Should be open.
Oh, well. What's happened? Maybe they have restricted hours at some point. Maybe.
It says open as usual. Open as usual means.
From what?
What does open as usual mean?
Oh. Well,
Being thwarted again.
thwarted. Yeah, it does say closed right there. Closed.
But it says open as usual.
Indian food.
Well, I had wanted to
Give them
to
some.
chat to the guy and give him a bit of publicity, but anyway,
I think they've got.
this will have to do.
They're on less hours. Right?
Doesn't matter. I can tell you instead.
come back.
I can tell you instead about the White Swan.
They're shut too.
They're shut too. They're always shut on a Sunday, I think.
Well,
But yeah, just to say a little thing about this. This actually used to be a synagogue, and then in 1972 it became the Half Moon Theatre, and it included rehearsal space and also a photography workshop and a sort of a communal living, very much hippie-ish place where people would stay. The theatre company would stay and the photographers would stay, and it was in the 70s. It was quite free and easy. But and it had a theatre there for just 80 seats, but it soon outgrew the theatre, and they moved the Half Moon to Mile End Road. Sadly, the Half Moon Theatre on Mile End Road is now a Wetherspoons. Both Half Moon theatres have been converted into pubs, which is interesting. But yeah, there's no theatre there anymore, but it's a lovely little pub when it's open. Okay, so I know a lot of you maybe used to live in Aldgate and are curious and have come across this video to see what it looks like now. This you will not recognise. This is Goodman's Fields. This is a very sort of trendy development. Now we've been living around quite close to here now for nigh on 6 years, and this is all new really since when we moved in. But what I really wanted to show you here were these fantastic horses.
The name Goodman's Fields harks back to the original landowner from the 1500s, a farmer called Roland Goodman. His son would let the fields out to other horse owners so they could graze their own horses. The 6 horses are seen as running because supposedly they broke free from their stable, so in the sculpture they are epitomising freedom. In the warmer months, there's a paddling pool and a clever effect underneath the water which makes it look as though the horses are galloping. It really is quite charming, though the screaming kids, not to mention their screaming parents, can be a bit annoying. Following a public competition, Hamish Mackie sculpted these magnificent horses 4 years ago out of 1.5 kilometres of armature steel, 75 kilos of welding rod, 6.5 tonnes of clay, 6 tonnes of bronze, and the blowtorches alone used 5 tonnes of oil and gas. So, not the most environmentally friendly sculpture, but it is beautiful and hopefully will last centuries and centuries, as long as our planet lasts that long.
Very nice.
It is nice, isn't it? And here is a little nod to the old history, the old Goodman's Fields. This is Goodman Stile. This is where the stile to get into his fields used to be. And it's great to see that it's still kept the old name.
Nice.
Okay, so now you've heard of livery companies, I'm sure. Now they're all in the City of London, and a lot of them don't do an awful lot these days. They do the odd charity work and stuff, but you know, saddlers and salters and stuff like that, not really a huge demand for them. Now this is one livery company which actually does an awful lot. This is the Worshipful Company of Gunmakers, and it's called a proof house. As you can see, it was established by charter in 1637. As you know, the United Kingdom is thankfully not really well known for its big gun culture. It's very hard to get a gun here. This is the London Proof House. And so every single gun sold in the United Kingdom has to be proved or proven, or I'm not sure, proofed, made sure that it's safe by this house. So it's actually this place, and there's a place in Birmingham that does it as well. So every single gun has to go through this place. It gets a little stamp saying GP, which I assume stands for gun proofed or something. The other thing that this place does is it decommissions weapons. So if there's a weapon that needs to be decommissioned, they'll do it at a cost, of course. And they also sell guns as well, if you have the correct license.
I like this.
So we're now on Adler Street, and this here is Coke Street. I do love this street. What I think is really interesting is this circular bit. Now, I'm not 100% sure. In fact, I'm not sure at all, and I've not been able to find out what the meaning of it is. But if we look at this old map by Weller from 1868, we see that this is the location roughly of the Sion Chapel. And as you'll see from this map, we're going to highlight it now with the green blob. You'll see that there is a circle, and that is roughly where Coke Street is today, just near where Union Row is. So this could have been the floor of the chapel in 1868. I'm not sure, but the main reason I wanted to bring you here is this. Now they aren't mulberry trees, by the way, but this used to all be mulberry fields.
Grow in this country.
Well, that's the funny thing. You see, back in 1607, James I,
Silk industry.
Yeah, James I in 1607, who our Scottish viewers, of course, will know as James VI. He really wanted to. I mean, obviously, there's a huge silk industry here, but he really wanted to actually bring the production of the silk here. So he had planted thousands upon thousands of mulberry trees. So this area was known as Mulberry Gardens, and if we look at this map here from 1746 by John Roke, so 140 years after James I's enterprise, we see that it was still called the Mulberry Gardens. But did it work? No, not really, because the mulberries that were imported were the wrong mulberries. They were the black.
There would be the ones that worms didn't like.
They were the black mulberry tree, or Morus nigra. And said they should have bought the ones that the silkworms really like, which is the white mulberry tree, which is Morus alba. So all these trees were pretty much useless. So what this turned into was a huge pleasure ground for the local people. In 1763, for a few weeks, it was a refugee asylum for 600 penniless stranded Germans. Or to be more accurate, they were from the Palatinate and Franconia. Now, they'd parted with all their money and had been conned into thinking that they were going to the Virgin Islands.
Oops.
But they were abandoned here in London by their officer with absolutely no money at all. None of them spoke any English, and the Tower of London set up 200 tents for them right here in the Mulberry Gardens. So roughly about 3 Germans per tent, and they stayed here for several months until King George III helped by getting them on board a ship to South Carolina following a huge petition. But why did they choose here? Well, actually, this whole area was known as Little Germany. Just around the corner from here, but on Alie Street, which is where we were earlier, where the halal restaurant is, but just further the other side of Lehman Street, we have the German Lutheran Church. Now, the German Lutheran Church was set up by a German sugar boiler, Dietrich Beckmann, and it was Beckmann's cousin, Gustav Anton Waschel, who became the first pastor of the St George's German Lutheran Church. And to this date, it is the oldest surviving German Lutheran church in the UK. And you can actually get married here in German if you want. Anyway, it was Waschel who appealed for the refuge of these stranded Germans here. Okay, so I brought you here because I wanted to show you a little bit of a vestige of this area's Mauritius past.
What?
Moracious means pertaining to mulberries. You see, this is an intellectual channel. You learn things every day. You may think that you know everything, but I bet you didn't know that moracious means referring to mulberries.
I did not.
No, this is Mulberry Street. The Mulberry Gardens would have been just behind St Boniface.
Oh, that's it.
This is St Boniface. This is a German church.
Wow, this is pretty cool.
It's obviously a much more modern church.
Very modern.
But interestingly, there's a little, you see down there, number 20, Wynfrid House. That's a German B&B, and apparently they do a really mean breakfast.
Ooh.
Fantastic mean breakfast with lots of German sausages and meats and cheese and stuff like that. Yes. And dark bread, I'm sure. And you don't have to be German or religious to eat here or stay here.
No,
and it's actually, for London, it's actually not bad price. It's about well, I mean, you can stay in a dorm for I think 20 quid a night, and I think you get your own room if you pay about 60 quid a night. So it's not bad at all. But a lot of Germans come here if they want a bit of a sort of comfort from home. Okay, so now the name Whitechapel. Where does it come from? There was a church here, a medieval church here dedicated to St Mary, Mother of Jesus. In 1338 it got a medieval rebranding and it became St Mary Matfelon. No one really knows exactly why it changed its name or its origins. Now the name Whitechapel comes from the fact that it was whitewashed with lime and chalk, and the white colour was the most obvious thing about it. In fact, it wasn't just a chapel, it was actually known as a Chapel of Ease. Chapel of Ease because St Dunstan, which is the main big church around here, this was easier to get to. And it is quite interesting that Matfelon may have a Hebrew origin in its name, because although it was a Church of England parish church, it was actually still actually quite popular with the Jewish population here in the late 1800s. Even some of the services were given in Yiddish. There's not much left of it, sadly. On the 29th of February 1940 it was destroyed in the Blitz by the Nazis, and for years it was just this burnt out shell until in 1952 it was demolished, and all we have really left are a few stumps, and we have that interesting thing over there, and we'll show you some. These are obviously some of the original parts, and there's a larger original part over there. So a lot of people won't necessarily know what this is. This is a Carrom board, and Carrom is a game from India, which is very popular across Southeast Asia, and it's a mixture of chess, button football and pool. Now one of the major Carrom youth academies was based down here in Adler Street. It's now a yoga place, and here's a little bit of footage just to show you what Carrom looks like. Yeah, so actually Sir John Cass is buried around here in this area. Sir John Cass, a lot of places are named after Sir John Cass. There's a university. Yes,
boo.
Yes, Boo John Cass, because he is in fact has strong connections with the slave trade, and in fact if you remember in episode 1 of Aldgate, we went to the church just down there, the St Botolph without Aldgate. There actually used to be a bust until this year of Sir John Cass, but after George Floyd they removed the bust. Right.
Something out of a Hitchcock film. Look at it. Come to London, see the sight.
Yeah. Now this.
They're attacking. Oh.
So a lot of people walk through this path and they don't notice the words, "The shade of my tree is offered to those who come and go fleetingly," by Bengali poet Rabindranath Tagore. And it's very appropriate too, because Tagore was ardently anti-nationalist. And that brings me on to a very sad story. I mentioned the Nazi attack in 1940. This area, unfortunately,
has had other attacks too.
Right. Yes, well this area unfortunately has had another more recent Nazi attack. On the 4th of May 1978, A 25-year-old Bangladeshi young man called Altab Ali was walking through this area on his way home. He'd just moved to Wapping actually, and he needed to vote because it was local elections, and so he was rushing through this area, and he was attacked by 3 neo-Nazi teenagers who were spurred on by all the horrible National Front and British National Party rhetoric that was coming out. In fact, this area fielded councillors in every single ward, and they got 10% of the vote, which is an outrageous amount. So he was stabbed to death by neo-Nazi racist scumbags on the 4th of May 1978. Now in 1998 this park was renamed Altab Ali in his memory. This is Altab Ali Park. So we have this fantastic arch as you go into the park, which has a very interesting Bengali pattern, and is made by the Welsh sculptor David Peterson. In the 4 months leading to Ali's death in 1978, there were 33 reported racist attacks, often carried out in broad daylight, and hardly any of them were properly investigated. And just 4 days before his murder, there'd been a massive anti-racist carnival organised by Rock Against Racism, and it was attended by 80,000 black, white and Asian people. Ali's shocking murder did do something good, however. It brought together lots of communities against the right-wing nationalist surge. The local Jewish community, the left-wing largely white squatters, the anarchists, they all joined together in protest. Never again. So on the 14th of May, just 10 days after Ali's murder, 7,000 people marched from here to Trafalgar Square to demand police protection for the Bengali community. National Front were beaten. The communities were all united and National Front became an insignificance. But you should never let your guard down, because it's some 21 years after Ali's murder, neo-Nazi David Copeland, who would have been 1 year old when Ali was killed, tried to start a war by detonating nail bombs in Brixton, the Admiral Duncan Gay Bar in Soho, and right here on Brick Lane. He will be at least 73 years old by the time he is released from Belmarsh prison. Okay, so there's this replica of the Shaheed Minar in Dhaka, which is perhaps the most poignant of all. Now I'm going to give you a little bit of a history lesson here. Now, the original Shaheed Minar in Dhaka was built on the 21st of February 1952 to commemorate those who were killed during the Bengali language movement in what was then East Pakistan. Pakistani police opened fire on students who were demanding that their language, Bengali, be given official status. 4 years later, Bengali was indeed made an official language in then Pakistan, along with Urdu. It's been rebuilt a couple of times since. And if there's any big cultural event happening in Bangladesh, or indeed any mourning happening, it tends to be held at the Shaheed Minar. So it's very fitting, therefore, that this park was chosen for the replica here in East London. And if you come here on midnight on the 20th of February, you'll find people paying respect and singing revolutionary songs in Bengali right here. This thing behind me symbolises not just Bangladeshi language, culture and heritage, but also worldwide freedom of expression.
Well, we appreciate that this was a bit of a more sombre episode than usual, but there were some very important topics that had to be discussed. We promise that the next Aldgate episode will be a lot more light-hearted.
Oh, 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 oh.
There's going to be a lot to cover. We talk about bells, an evil barber, evil redevelopments, and we delve into Aldgate's anarchic past and present. Till the next time.
From Acton Town to Wimbledon, from Brixton to beyond, love your London, have a banana.